They act like you don't exist, like you never mattered. They leave your messages on read. They scroll past your posts. They walk past you like you're invisible. But here's the truth. No one tells you. They're thinking about you more than you realize. That's silence. It's not emptiness. It's noise. A loud signal that something about you unsettles them, intrigues them, reminds them of something they can't fully process. Being ignored can feel like rejection. It can trigger doubt, anxiety, and a storm of overthinking. But what if I told you that their coldness isn't about your lack of value, but about the emotional imprint you left behind? Psychology teaches us that avoidance is often a defense mechanism. People don't suppress what they're indifferent to. They suppress what lingers, what stirs emotion. So when someone ignores you, it's not always because you're forgettable. It's often because you're unforgettable in a way that scares them. People avoid what forces them to confront their own feelings. When your presence touches a nerve, whether it's admiration, guilt, regret, or even unspoken desire, it becomes easier to act like you don't exist than to face the emotional turbulence you represent. So, they bury the reaction. They avoid the trigger. They pretend indifference. But pretending and feeling are not the same. Behind that silence is a storm they're too afraid to face. The human brain is wired to seek resolution. When a connection is left open, it lingers. That's why people remember words left unsaid, glances that meant more, or energy they can't quite explain. When you're ignored, it doesn't mean you're gone. It means you're unresolved. You're still there, taking up space in a mind that doesn't know how to let you go. And here's what makes the difference: how you respond. Do you break down trying to prove your worth? Or do you rise and let your silence echo louder than their words ever could? Because true power isn't loud, it's composed. It's choosing not to chase what already knows your value. In this video, I'm going to give you 10 deep psychological truths and practical strategies to shift the narrative, to stop seeking validation and start radiating self-respect, to use the silence not as punishment, but as proof that your presence is too loud to ignore. You don't have to shout to be heard. Sometimes all you have to do is disappear correctly. Let's dive in. Number 1. Silence is a statement. Use it powerfully. Silence isn't weakness. It's the language of control. In psychology, silence introduces uncertainty, and humans are wired to fear what they don't understand. That fear creates curiosity, and curiosity is often louder than any words you could speak. When someone ignores you, it's tempting to fill the void, to reach out, to explain, to ask for clarity. But restraint is where the power lives. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Silence is a conscious reaction. It's not passive, it's intentional. You don't stay silent because you have nothing to say. You stay silent because what you've already shown speaks louder than anything left to explain. Psychologically, silence triggers the Zeigarnik effect, a mental phenomenon where the brain fixates more on incomplete experiences than resolved ones. That means when you remove your energy, your voice, your availability, the other person starts replaying your absence like a loop. Not because you begged for attention, but because you denied them closure. Silence keeps the story open. And in that open space, reflection begins. When you stop over-explaining, when you no longer chase clarity from someone who chooses to be distant, you shift the power dynamic. You stop feeding their ego and start building your presence. Because people aren't drawn to what's easy, they're drawn to what's enigmatic. When you're silent, you become a puzzle. And nothing haunts the mind like an unanswered question. but silence only works when it's paired with inner calm. If your silence is loud with bitterness, it's still noise. True power is quiet. It doesn't need recognition to be real. It doesn't seek permission to exist. The moment you start observing instead of reacting is the moment you become dangerous, not to hurt anyone, but because you now own your energy. Silence says, I'm not fighting for a place in your world anymore. I am the world. That presence, that detachment, speaks louder than confrontation ever could. The person who can sit in silence and still feel full is the one who's already won. Use your silence like a blade, not to wound, but to cut through illusions and show them the strength they tried to overlook. Number 2, the spotlight effect. There's a psychological concept called the spotlight effect, the tendency for people to believe they are being noticed more than they actually are. But in emotionally charged relationships, something different happens. The ones who ignore you are often the very ones thinking about you the most, because in their silence, there's effort, and effort means energy is still being spent on you. We often assume that silence equals disinterest, that when someone doesn't respond, doesn't acknowledge, doesn't show up, they must have moved on. But here's what psychology reveals. The mind clings to unfinished business. The brain replays interactions that don't have closure. Emotional memories stick. Unspoken words echo. The more someone tries to avoid thinking about you, the more their mind is forced to confront what they're trying to suppress. Intentional ignorance is not absence, it's evidence. It's not passive, it's chosen. People don't go out of their way to ignore something they're indifferent to. They ignore what disturbs their emotional equilibrium. And that disturbance is your presence. That's silence. It's them managing an inner conflict they don't want you to see. Your job is not to decode their behavior, chase explanations, or shrink yourself for clarity. Your job is to recognize the power of the void you leave behind. That space you no longer occupy physically, you now occupy psychologically. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That means you don't need to react to their silence with insecurity or retaliation. You simply need to keep showing up in your own life with calm purpose. Let them carry the weight of what they're not confronting. Let them replay the conversations they never finished and the connection they failed to nourish. You don't need to remind them of your value. When someone ignores you with effort, it's a sign that you're unforgettable. When you walk away with composure, your silence becomes the loudest presence in the room. And while they wrestle with what they didn't resolve, you continue rising, unbothered, unchained, and unforgettable. Number 3, high-value people don't chase, they attract. Let this be your mantra. I do not chase. I attract. What belongs to me will find me, because chasing is rooted in fear, in lack, in the belief that something outside of you defines your worth. But attraction, that's born from strength. From knowing that your value doesn't depend on who acknowledges it, it exists regardless. Psychologically, when you pull your energy back from someone who's ignoring you, you disrupt the dynamic. Suddenly, the power they felt in your attention begins to fade. That absence creates cognitive dissonance, a psychological tension that arises when someone's expectations don't match reality. They expected you to keep showing up. They relied on your validation, and when it stops, they start questioning why. That questioning breeds curiosity, then regret, then reflection. This is how you become magnetic, by doing less, not from apathy, but from certainty. Think of yourself as gravity. You don't run, you don't chase. You draw in, through groundedness, confidence, and detachment. The more self-assured you are, the stronger your pull becomes. High-value people are not defined by how loudly they fight for attention, but by how silently they stand in their power. When someone ignores you, they're expecting you to react, to seek, to beg, and when you don't, it forces them to confront what your absence really means. They don't feel your desperation. They feel your disappearance. That's the moment they realize your presence wasn't just noise. It was stability. It was energy. It was irreplaceable. Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy. While we wait, life passes by." Stop waiting. Stop expecting validation from someone too distracted to see clearly. Live. Level up. Move like someone who doesn't need to be chosen, because they already chose themselves. Being high value isn't arrogance, it's clarity. It's knowing that anyone who truly sees you won't need convincing. So stop performing for people who don't clap. Stop offering your light to those who wear blindfolds. Let them feel the emptiness where your energy used to be. That's the impact. That's the echo that stays long after you're gone. Chasing is noise. Attraction is power. And power doesn't chase. It stands still and lets the world rearrange around it. Number 4, curiosity is more powerful than validation. Validation seeks approval. Curiosity builds intrigue. And in the game of human behavior, intrigue always wins. When you stop trying to explain yourself, when you stop giving people the answers they expect, you shift from being predictable to being unforgettable. And that shift is where the real power lies. Psychology shows that the brain craves closure. It's called the need for cognitive closure, a psychological drive to resolve uncertainty. When someone doesn't understand your silence, your growth, or the reason you suddenly stopped reaching out, they're forced to interpret the blanks. They begin to analyze, replay, wonder. That curiosity becomes a mental loop they can't break out of. Validation is like giving them the final chapter to a story they haven't earned the right to finish. But curiosity, that keeps them turning pages that don't exist, because they want answers only time and distance might reveal. You don't need to post about your growth. You don't need to announce your healing or your progress. Just do it, quietly, powerfully. Let your actions confuse them. Let your evolution become the question they can't stop asking. Not out of revenge, but out of alignment. Because when you start living for your own expansion instead of their attention, your energy changes, and they feel that shift deeply. Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." In other words, let people misunderstand your silence. Let them assume you're weak, lost, or irrelevant. While they're speculating, you're building. While they're guessing, you're evolving. And when someone can't figure you out, they keep coming back to the idea of you. Not necessarily because they want to, but because their mind is searching for closure it can't find. That's the power of detachment. That's the beauty of self-respect. Don't seek to be understood. Be content being undecipherable. Let your calm become the storm they didn't expect. Because curiosity lasts longer than validation, and mystery leaves a deeper mark than any explanation ever could. Number 5. Detachment is mastery. Emotionally unhook yourself. Detachment is not indifference, it's control. It's the decision to feel without becoming enslaved to feeling. When someone ignores you, the natural reaction is emotional chaos. Your brain releases cortisol, heightening anxiety, stress, and self-doubt. You begin spiraling, overanalyzing, imagining worst-case scenarios. But this is exactly where mastery begins. in the space between emotion and reaction. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop needing. You stop seeking validation from people who treat your presence like an option. You reclaim your emotional autonomy. You no longer hinge your self-worth on whether someone chooses you today or disappears tomorrow. Psychologically, detachment is a form of secure independence. It's when your identity is rooted in your own standards, not someone else's perception of your value. And the moment you remove those emotional hooks, the need to be seen, heard, replied to, you regain clarity. You move from desperation to discipline. You stop playing their game and start mastering your own. As Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's the essence of detachment. It's not about what happens. It's about how you choose to respond. You can love someone deeply, wish them well, and still walk away with peace. Because peace isn't given, it's built inside. When you practice detachment, people feel the shift. They feel when they no longer have emotional leverage over you, and that unsettles them. They may have been used to you reacting, chasing, proving, but now you're calm, you're focused, you're untouchable. That's when the dynamic flips, because emotional independence is rare, and in a world addicted to attention, your detachment becomes power. Let them wonder why you're no longer affected. Let them feel the absence of control. Your silence now holds authority. Your indifference holds weight. And your peace. That becomes the most attractive force in the room. You don't have to stop feeling to win. You just have to stop needing their response to feel whole. That's not cold, that's mastery. Number 6. Your evolution is their karma. Success isn't just achievement, it's psychological warfare. The moment you rise, not in arrogance but in alignment, you shift the entire dynamic. You don't just glow up physically, you evolve mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And that evolution becomes a mirror, one that reflects back to others everything they failed to see, appreciate, or respect in you. People don't forget the version of you they ignored, underestimated, or mishandled. That version lives in their memory. So when they see you become someone stronger, sharper, more grounded, they're not just seeing your growth. They're being forced to confront their past decisions. That's not revenge. That's reality catching up with them. Growth changes the narrative. It rewrites how people remember you. And when you become unrecognizable to those who mistreated you, it creates discomfort. They're not just shocked by who you've become, they're haunted by what they threw away. That discomfort, that regret, that's karma, not the cosmic kind, the psychological kind. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to prove your worth. The person who ignored your message will see your name celebrated. The one who dismissed you will watch your energy shift into influence, and they'll do it from a distance, because your new level doesn't grant them access. Every time you level up, you're sending a message without speaking. You're saying, "I healed what you broke. I became what you feared, and I did it without you." That's not bitterness. It's power. It's ownership of your own journey. When you evolve, you move from being ignored to being unforgettable. Not because you begged for attention, but because you became undeniable. Let that be your focus. Let growth be your vengeance. Let peace be your armor. And when they sit in silence, trying to make sense of your transformation, they'll realize that your evolution isn't just personal. It's the karmic echo of everything they once failed to value. Number 7. Reverse the chase. Make them come to you. People want what feels just out of reach. Psychologically, scarcity breeds desire. It's human nature to chase what seems elusive. to crave what's no longer handed to us on demand. And this is where you flip the dynamic. When you stop reaching out, stop initiating, stop offering your time and attention freely, suddenly, your absence becomes louder than your presence ever was. They notice, not because you begged, but because you didn't. They feel the shift. The silence they once found convenient becomes uncomfortable. The energy they assumed would always be there is gone. And in that emptiness, curiosity is born. That's how the chase reverses. This isn't about playing games. It's about knowing your worth. It's about refusing to water dead plants. Psychology shows us that people are more drawn to individuals who maintain a healthy emotional distance, not as a form of rejection, but as a display of self-assuredness. When you stop over-explaining, over-giving, and overextending, you stop being accessible to those who haven't earned access. You become the one who chooses, not the one who waits to be chosen. You become unavailable, not from bitterness, but because you've filled your life with purpose, passion, progress. And those who once took you for granted start to realize that reaching you now requires effort. The power lies in your absence, your detachment, your refusal to be easy to reach for those who didn't value you when you were. When you reclaim your energy and invest it into yourself, your goals, your mindset, your growth, you become the kind of person people regret overlooking. Let them feel the silence. Let them notice the distance. Let them ask, "Why aren't you calling anymore?" And when they do, you'll know the shift is working. Your time is sacred. Your energy is currency. When you stop giving discounts, people start paying attention. Let them be the one to reach out now, not because you're cold, but because you've risen to a level where your presence is earned, not expected. Reverse the chase by remembering who you are. Scarcity isn't manipulation, it's magnetism, and the most unforgettable people are the ones who know when to pull away. Number 8. Focus on identity, not attention. Attention fades, identity remains. If you spend your life chasing applause, you'll never hear your own voice. But when you anchor yourself in who you are, not who you need others to see, you become unforgettable without even trying. Most people are addicted to attention, the likes, the views, the validation. But that's surface level. It's fleeting. It disappears as quickly as it came, and it leaves you empty, constantly needing more. But identity, that's solid. That's the foundation. It's the quiet knowing of your values, your vision, your mission. When you stop trying to be seen and start becoming someone worth remembering, everything shifts. You no longer have to perform for recognition. You naturally command it. Because people don't remember noise. They remember impact. They remember energy. They remember authenticity. Psychology tells us that people are drawn to congruence when your actions, values, and presence align. That kind of person radiates clarity. They're not chasing attention. They're living with intention. And that's rare. That's magnetic. Ask yourself, am I trying to be impressive, or am I trying to be aligned? Because one will burn you out. The other will build you up. Stop bending for acceptance. Start building an identity that's rooted in truth. Be the one who's so focused on growth, on vision, on purpose, that attention becomes a byproduct, not the goal. And here's the secret. The less you seek to be noticed, the more you stand out. Because most people are lost in the noise. You become the signal. Let others crave the spotlight. You build the fire. You become the one who lights up every room just by being authentically you. That's real influence. That's identity-driven power. The loudest person isn't always the strongest, the one rooted in self. The one who doesn't flinch when they're ignored is the one who truly lasts. Forget being liked. Be real. Be consistent. Be legendary. Let attention chase you because your identity can't be ignored. Number 9. Emotional memory is stronger than logic. Have you ever wondered why someone still thinks about you, even if you haven't exchanged a word in months? Why, even after the silence, the distance, or their cold behavior, your presence still lingers in their life, like a shadow they can't shake? It's not imagination, it's neuroscience. Emotional memory is stored deeper and lasts longer in the brain than logical memory. The amygdala, the part of the brain that processes emotion, tags certain moments as significant, especially ones tied to love, loss, pain, passion, or inspiration. Those memories don't fade just because time passes or contact ends. They leave fingerprints on the soul. People may forget what you said. They may even forget what you did. But they will never forget how you made them feel. That's the real imprint. That's what echoes when they're alone, when the distractions fade, when the masks drop. Even if they act indifferent now, even if they pretend to have moved on, the emotional charge you left behind remains. That spontaneous laughter, that night of vulnerability, that moment they hurt you but saw strength in your silence. It's all there. Buried, maybe, but not erased. This is why chasing closure is a waste of energy. You don't need someone to validate your impact with words. The connection you built, if it was real, left a mark. And that mark doesn't vanish just because they choose to ignore it. So don't beg to be remembered. Don't shrink yourself to fit back into their comfort zone. Instead, trust that the emotional thread you left behind is still pulling at them in the quiet moments. When they see something that reminds them of you, when a scent, a song, or a phrase hits them unexpectedly, that's when memory strikes hardest, because it bypasses logic and goes straight to the heart. You don't have to do anything. You already did enough. The imprint is there. Emotional memory is the most stubborn kind, and it doesn't disappear just because someone refuses to acknowledge it. Let them sit with the silence. You've already said enough. Number 10. Your worth isn't measured by their acknowledgement. Let this sink in. Just because they don't see your value doesn't mean you don't have it. Too many of us fall into the trap of believing someone else's recognition, or lack thereof, defines our worth. But their reaction to you is not a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of their perspective, their understanding, and often their limitations. One of the most damaging beliefs you can hold is that someone's approval, or their silence, determines who you are. The truth is, rejection speaks more about their fears, their insecurities, and their inability to recognize your greatness than about anything lacking in you. People reject what they fear, what challenges their self-perception, or what makes them uncomfortable. Your value is too vast, too complex, to be reduced to a single moment of neglect or silence. Psychologically, this pattern is rooted in projection, the idea that people often project their inner struggles onto others. So, when you're ignored, it's not about you, it's about them. They may feel unworthy, insecure, or simply incapable of seeing the greatness right in front of them. When you understand this, you stop internalizing rejection. You stop taking it personally. Instead of feeling small, you feel empowered. You rise above the need for external validation because you realize that your worth is not up for debate. It is intrinsic. It is unshakable. Your worth is not negotiable. It's non-refundable. You don't need their acknowledgement to validate who you are. You are worthy simply because you exist. Your worth is a constant, unchanging truth that remains steady, no matter how many people fail to recognize it or how many times you're ignored. So, keep building, keep growing, keep showing up, not for them, but for yourself. Invest in yourself because you are the ultimate measure of your worth, not someone else's fleeting opinion or silence. And when you walk in that truth, you will find that their acknowledgement becomes irrelevant. You don't need them to see your value. You already know what you're worth. And that's all that matters. Listen, you were never meant to be invisible. You were meant to be unforgettable. And the reason they're ignoring you isn't because you're unworthy. It's because you made an impact they can't explain. So, stop waiting for their approval. Stop shrinking yourself for people who aren't ready for your light. Start focusing on your path, your power, and your peace. The best response to being ignored is not revenge. It's not attention-seeking. It's elevation. It's walking away so powerfully that your silence becomes a memory they can't erase. If you felt this message, if it woke something up in you, don't let it fade. Subscribe to this channel. Join a community that sees you, values you, and pushes you to be more. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment below. They ignore me, but I rise. Let's build a movement, because one thing is for sure, they may ignore you now, but they'll never forget you.